Imagine a dime from 1976, struck during America's bicentennial, but carrying a mistake so rare it turned pocket change into a treasure. Fast forward to 1995, when another dime slipped into circulation, hiding a flaw invisible to most but worth far more than 10 cents to collectors. And then, in 2007, a fresh error appeared, coins ordinary at first glance, yet destined to break the rules of minting itself. 3 different years, 3 different mistakes, each transforming the simplest coin in your change into something extraordinary. In 1976, the United States Mint was consumed with patriotic fervor. The nation was celebrating its bicentennial, and special designs were struck for quarters, half dollars, and dollars to mark 200 years of independence. But the dime, the modest 10-cent piece bearing Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile, remained unchanged. It was not granted a commemorative reverse. No torch or laurel branch was replaced with a revolutionary motif. Instead, it rolled off the presses in massive quantities, hundreds of millions from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, intended only to keep commerce moving as parades, fireworks, and commemorations unfolded across the nation. Among those billions of coins produced in the mid-1970s, the dime seemed the most ordinary of all. And yet, hidden within that ordinariness, something slipped through the mint's quality controls. Something collectors would only recognize years later. A young collector named Daniel stumbled across one such dime in 1983. He was not searching for rarities at the time. A student at a small community college in Illinois, he was counting change after buying gas when a coin caught his attention. It looked darker, more coppery than the rest of his silver-toned dimes. At first, he thought it had simply tarnished. But when he dropped it next to another dime, the sound was off, a duller ring instead of the sharp metallic ping. His curiosity grew. He picked it up and noticed the edge. Instead of the expected sandwich of copper core with nickel cladding, the edge revealed a solid reddish color. No silvery outer layers, no visible striping. Daniel knew enough about coins to realize this dime was not normal. A Roosevelt dime was supposed to be clad, with a copper core wrapped in nickel. Yet this coin seemed struck entirely on a copper planchet, more like a cent than a dime. His hands trembled as he weighed it against another dime, feeling it was lighter, thinner. Something was terribly unusual here. He put it aside, unsure of what he had just discovered, but unable to shake the sense that he held something significant. For months, he showed the coin to local shop owners. Most shrugged, saying it was damaged or altered. A few suggested it had been plated. One told him flatly to spend it, that it was worth 10 cents and nothing more. But Daniel trusted his instincts. He refused to let it go. Instead, he tucked it carefully into a small envelope, carrying it with him through moves, jobs, and the ordinary distractions of life. It wasn't until years later, when error coins began gaining traction in the collector market, that he realized what he truly had. An off-metal error dime, struck on a copper planchet never intended for the denomination. The story of these off-metal 1976 dimes is one of chance. At the mint, planchets for cents and dimes were prepared separately, each cut from different strips of metal. For reasons still unclear, a handful of copper cent blanks found their way into the presses designated for dimes. The result was a small number of coins bearing Roosevelt's profile but struck on the wrong metal. Most were caught and destroyed before release, but a few escaped into circulation. And one of those found its way into Daniel's pocket change. As the 1990s arrived, collectors began to recognize such errors as extraordinary. Auction houses started to list them, describing them as 1976 Roosevelt dime struck on cent planchet. Prices at first were modest, $300, sometimes $500 if the condition was strong. Daniel followed these sales closely. The thought that his coin might be worth hundreds thrilled him. But what excited him even more was the validation that he had not been mistaken. His persistence, his refusal to dismiss the odd coin, had preserved a piece of mint history. The market only grew from there. By the early 2000s, off-metal errors had become one of the hottest niches in numismatics. Collectors realized how rare it was for a coin to be struck on the wrong blank, especially from a year so iconic as 1976. The bicentennial era already held allure for hobbyists, and even though the dime had not been given a special design, the errors from that year carried a strange kind of symbolic weight. They were the overlooked denomination in a year of celebration, and yet, paradoxically, they ended up producing some of the most dramatic rarities. Daniel's coin, carefully preserved all those years, was finally submitted for authentication. When it came back in a protective holder with the label 1976 D. Roosevelt dime struck on cent planchet, his heart swelled. The grading service confirmed its authenticity and graded it -58 Australian dollars. It was not mint state, but it was genuine, and that alone made it precious. Dealers began to make offers, $1, $200, then $1,500. He declined, not yet ready to let it go. He wanted to watch the story unfold, to see just how far the market might carry his discovery. What fascinated collectors was not just the off-metal strikes but the variety of errors that appeared on 1976 dimes. Reports surfaced of broad strikes, where the coin had been struck without a collar and spread unnaturally wide. Others showed dramatic off-center strikes, with Roosevelt's face sliding toward the rim, the date sometimes missing entirely. A few double dies were whispered about, though not fully catalogued, their doubled lettering barely visible under magnification. Each error told its own story of the mint's machinery and its moments of failure, adding to the year's mystique. Then came the twist that few expected. In the late 2000s, a small number of collectors reported discovering 1976 dimes struck on foreign planchets, blanks intended for coins of other nations, which were often produced at the U.S. Mint during that era. One dime, for example, weighed less than normal and was confirmed to be struck on a planchet intended for a coin of South America. These were rarer still, each one a puzzle that connected American coinage to global production lines. Suddenly, the 1976 dime was not just an error curiosity but a key player in a broader story of mint experimentation, mix-ups, and mishaps. Values surged accordingly. By the 2010s, an off-metal 1976 dime in high grade could fetch $2,500 or more at auction. Broad strikes and off-centers sold in the hundreds, sometimes pushing into the thousands if they were dramatic enough. The foreign planchet strikes, when authenticated, were so scarce that estimates placed their value at $10,000 or higher, depending on the pairing. What began as a dismissed oddity in Daniel's pocket change had evolved into one of the most coveted error stories of the decade. And yet, despite the rising prices and attention, most Americans never suspected such a thing existed. The dime remained the most overlooked coin in everyday commerce, passed without notice at gas stations and coffee counters. To the untrained eye, they all looked the same, small, silver-toned, unremarkable. But for those who knew where to look, the year 1976 hid within its coinage a series of mysteries, each capable of turning 10 cents into thousands of dollars. Daniel still holds his dime, though the offers have grown tempting. The coin represents more than money to him. It represents persistence, curiosity, and the strange accidents of history that can turn an ordinary purchase into a lifelong story. He often wonders how many others like his remain hidden in drawers, jars, or circulation, dismissed as tarnished or damaged. He wonders if someone, somewhere, will one day find another, and feel the same rush of disbelief that he felt under that dim gas station light in 1983. The 1976 dime stands as a paradox. It was the coin that did not change during America's year of celebration, and yet, through errors and mishaps, it became one of the most fascinating stories of that era. From off-metal strikes to foreign planchets, from broad strikes to double dies, it transformed from the most ordinary denomination into an unlikely star of the numismatic world. And hidden within it is a reminder that history often reveals itself not in grand designs, but in the small mistakes we are fortunate enough to notice. The year was 1995, and the U.S. Mint was producing dimes in staggering quantities. Tens of millions of these small silver-toned coins rolled off presses in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. They bore the familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, a design introduced in 1946 to honor the late president and his legacy in fighting polio. By this point in history, the dime was a cornerstone of American commerce, light in the hand yet essential for vending machines, parking meters, and daily transactions. But buried within the countless strikes of that year, a few dimes carried with them something entirely unplanned, a whisper of imperfection that would later ripple across the numismatic world. At first glance, these dimes were indistinguishable from their ordinary companions. Each carried the inscriptions "Liberty" and "I in God We Trust." The date 1995 pressed clearly beneath Roosevelt's chin, and on the reverse, the torch, olive branch, and oak branch symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. But in certain runs, something unusual occurred. A slight misalignment, a doubled impression, or in rare cases, a clash between dies created coins that bore marks beyond what the mint had ever intended. It was in this environment that an error was born, overlooked by mint workers but destined to be noticed by sharp eyes years later. For a long time, no one suspected that among the countless 1995 dimes rattling in pockets, cash registers, and soda machines, a hidden rarity existed. To most people, these coins were simply worth 10 cents, tools of convenience. But collectors, with their magnifying glasses and relentless curiosity, began to notice irregularities. In one instance, the inscriptions seemed to shimmer unnaturally, the letters showing shadows where none should exist. Roosevelt's profile, usually sharp and commanding, appeared ghosted with faint doubling, a subtle but undeniable misprint, an error that would turn an ordinary dime into something extraordinary. One collector, sorting through a jar of pocket change in the late 1990s, was the first to feel the stirrings of excitement. The dime he pulled out was just like the others in weight and size, but the date caught his eye. The 1995 seemed off, as though it carried two images struggling to exist in the same space. At first, he dismissed it as wear, but something kept nagging at him. He fetched a magnifying glass, the kind he always used for checking wheat pennies and silver quarters, and what he saw under the lens stopped him cold. The doubling was real. The features were clear. He had stumbled upon a true minting error, one that could not be dismissed as damage or trick of the EYT. That moment, his emotions surged, doubt battling with exhilaration. Could it be authentic? Could a dime that most people would trade for a pack of gum hold hidden value? He sought the opinions of fellow collectors, some skeptical, others intrigued. Word began to spread, quietly at first, then with more certainty, that a 1995 Roosevelt dime with striking errors had surfaced. And once one appeared, more were bound to follow. The value of such a discovery is never immediate. In the beginning, the coin fetched modest premiums, $10 here, $50 there, depending on the clarity of the doubling or the peculiarity of the strike. To some, these prices seemed inconsequential, yet they hinted at the potential hidden within. Over the years, as knowledge spread and collectors began hunting specifically for these anomalies, demand surged. Auction houses started listing examples, and bidding wars broke out among those eager to secure one before prices rose further. A dime that once rested in an ordinary change drawer now commanded sums unimaginable for its face value. By the early 2000s, confirmed double-die obverse examples of the 1995 dime began selling for hundreds of dollars. The more dramatic the doubling, the higher the value climbed. Collectors marveled at the contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary, that such a tiny piece of metal, no different in composition from its countless peers, could transform into a prize simply by an unintentional twist of machinery. The value did not grow in a steady, predictable line. It surged, fell, and surged again, like the heartbeat of the collecting community itself. Every fresh discovery reignited interest, and every auction record set off whispers of what the next coin might bring. The error itself is striking. On certain specimens, the words "I in God We Trust" appear doubled, each letter shadowed as though echoed in metal. Roosevelt's profile, crisp and dignified on normal strikes, sometimes appears with doubled features, creating an eerie ghost-like effect. The date 1995 can show this doubling as well, further confirming its authenticity. To the untrained eye, it may look like nothing more than a blur or smudge, but to the seasoned numismatist, it is evidence of a doubled die, a cherished rarity born from the mint's own processes. But the story does not end there. As collectors cataloged these coins, an unexpected twist emerged. Some examples of the 1995 dime not only bore doubling but also showed faint traces of what appeared to be transitional characteristics. In rare cases, Coins were found struck on planchets not intended for the dime at all. Slightly off metal errors, the result of leftover blanks from other denominations finding their way into presses. Imagine the shock of discovering a dime with the weight of a foreign coin, or struck on a clad quarter-stock planchet. Such pieces defied expectations, pushing the boundaries of what collectors thought they knew about the 1995 issue. The impact of these errors is profound. Not only do they highlight the human and mechanical imperfections within the minting process, but they also remind collectors that treasures can hide in plain sight. A single jar of coins might hold a fortune waiting to be recognized. Each 1995 error dime tells its own story, of machinery misaligned, of engravings doubled, of a momentary lapse in precision that allowed something unique to escape into circulation. And within that story lies the thrill of the hunt, the allure that keeps collectors searching through rolls of change, hoping lightning might strike again. Today, the 1995 error dime stands as a testament to how a simple coin can transcend its intended purpose. From its quiet birth among millions of others, to its dramatic rediscovery in the hands of a curious collector, to its rise in value through auctions and private sales, it has carved a place in numismatic history. Some specimens sell for hundreds, others for thousands depending on condition and clarity. Their worth shaped not just by rarity but by the passion of those who seek them. The twist, of course, is that even now, decades later, these dimes might still be hiding. In circulation, in old drawers, in forgotten piggy banks. Their presence is unknown until the right eyes uncover them. What began as a tiny imperfection in 1995 continues to ripple through time, turning what was meant to be common into something unforgettable. The dime in 2007 was as unassuming as ever, a coin so small and ordinary that few gave it more than a passing glance. Tens of millions were minted at Philadelphia and Denver that year, their clad composition of copper and nickel unchanged from the mid-1960s. Each bore the familiar face of Franklin D. Roosevelt, a design in place since 1946 with his profile facing left, the inscriptions "Liberty" and "I in God We Trust" close by, and the date neatly positioned just beneath his chin. On the reverse stood the torch of liberty, flanked by branches of oak and olive, a compact yet powerful symbol of peace and strength. To the average American, it was simply 10 cents, fuel for vending machines, laundromats, and parking meters. But among the sea of uniform strikes, a few carried with them something no one at the mint had planned, and no one in circulation expected. It began as it so often does, with the endless rhythm of presses at the U.S. Mint, steel dies slamming planchets into coins at astonishing speeds. Precision is the standard, but perfection is not guaranteed. Even in an age of modern quality controls, mistakes escape, and in 2007, some of those mistakes were destined to become legendary. Errors slipped quietly into circulation, off-center strikes, broad strikes, missing clad layers, even dimes struck on the wrong metal planchets. They were out there, hiding in change drawers and coin rolls, waiting to be noticed. The discovery, as always, came not in the mint itself but in the hands of a curious collector. He was not searching for treasure that day, merely sorting through a pile of change gathered over weeks. Dimes, nickels, pennies. They spilled across the table, their clinks echoing faintly. He picked up one dime without thinking, the 2007 date barely registering at first. But then something caught his eye. The rim was off, unusually broad on one side and strangely thin on the other. The design looked misaligned, the torch and branches pressed awkwardly toward the edge. He turned it under the light, his heart quickening. This was no ordinary coin. A rush of disbelief filled him. Could this really be an error? He had handled thousands of coins over the years, always hoping for something unusual, and here it was in his palm. He leaned closer, pulling out a magnifier. The details confirmed his suspicion. The coin was a dramatic off-center strike, the date partially cut, Roosevelt's head sliding dangerously toward the edge. What should have been a flawless, symmetrical dime was instead a distorted testament to imperfection. The feeling was intoxicating. That moment when ordinary metal reveals itself to be extraordinary cannot be replicated. At first, he hesitated, unsure whether others would recognize its value. To some, this coin would look like nothing more than a damaged dime, the kind of piece a cashier might refuse. But to collectors, it was something entirely different. It was a mistake made by the mint, a product of chance and circumstance, a rarity that slipped through the cracks and into the world. Word spread slowly at first. He shared his find with local collectors, some skeptical, others intrigued. Then came confirmation. Other 2007-era dimes had surfaced too. Some showed missing clad layers, the copper core exposed like a reddish wound beneath the silvery surface. Others bore broad strikes, their rims stretched unnaturally wide from a failure of the collar die. And still others carried faint whispers of different metals entirely, as if they had been struck on leftover foreign planchets. The realization struck hard. 2007 was not a flawless year for the dimed as these coins trickled into auctions. Their value began to evolve. Early sales were modest, $30, $50, perhaps $100 if the error was dramatic enough. But collectors are nothing if not determined, and once the pattern became clear, demand rose. By the mid-2010s, certain 2007-era dimes commanded hundreds of dollars, depending on condition and rarity. The prices surged unpredictably, spiking with every new discovery, then leveling off only to rise again as examples grew harder to find. The evolution of value told its own story. A dime worth 10 cents in commerce became worth more than a fine meal, then more than a day's wages, then in some cases more than an ounce of silver itself. Collectors debated which errors carried the greatest significance. Some swore by the off-center strikes, their dramatic visuals undeniable. Others chased the missing clad layer dimes, fascinated by the glimpse into the coin's hidden copper core. And then there were whispers of an even rarer twist. 2007 dimes struck on misused planchets not intended for the denomination at all. That was where the story took its most unexpected turn. A few sharp-eyed collectors reported finding 2007 dimes weighing slightly off the standard 2.27 grams. Some came in heavier, others lighter, their metallic composition betraying their true origins. These coins were struck on planchets meant for foreign currency, leftover blanks accidentally fed into the presses. Such pieces were incredibly rare, not only errors but true anomalies, combining two histories into one coin. They became the crown jewels of the 2007 dime errors, their values skyrocketing well into the thousands when confirmed and graded. The physical impact of these errors cannot be overstated. The off-center strikes distort the familiar portrait of Roosevelt into something haunting and surreal. The missing clad layers expose the coin's hidden anatomy, a copper core peeking through where silver should be. The broad strikes stretch the design into grotesque proportions, as if the dime had been melted and pulled apart. Each type of error transforms the dime into a miniature piece of art, accidental yet mesmerizing. But what makes them so captivating is not merely their appearance. It is the story they tell. They speak of the mint's fallibility, of the hidden chaos within a system designed for order. They remind collectors that perfection is rare, and imperfection, when captured in metal, can become priceless. And they carry within them the suspense of discovery, for even now, nearly 2 decades later, such coins might still be out there. Somewhere in a coin jar, a dresser drawer, or a roll of change waiting at a bank, another 2007 dime error could be hiding. It may be overlooked by countless hands before it finds the one person who sees it for what it truly is. And in that moment, the cycle repeats, the disbelief, the thrill, the rush of discovery, and the realization that a small, ordinary coin has become something extraordinary. The 2007 error dimes are not just mistakes. They are stories struck in copper and nickel, stories of chance and fortune, stories that continue to unfold each time another is found. For collectors, they are not merely coins. They are mysteries, each carrying a piece of history, each capable of transforming 10 cents into a treasure worth hundreds, even thousands. And the greatest mystery of all is how many remain undiscovered, waiting for the right pair of eyes to unlock their secret.